Hey there, speculators. It's Rod, your Futures Fanatic. I'd like to introduce you to a very cool tool that I just come across called edgeful. And this video is actually going to be another one in my Founders interview series. In the past, I've interviewed prop trading companies, and a lot of them. That's a big focus of my channel. And I get approached very, very often by indicator companies and crypto companies and brokers and a lot of things in the trading space. And almost always, it's just not a really good fit for me. I'm not going to use the tool personally. And if I don't use the tool personally, I generally don't want to create much content about it or promote it. In this case, very, very different. When I first came across edgeful and saw the power of this, they didn't actually have futures data at the time. They worked with me, they added futures, and they added a number of different reports. We'll talk about that during the actual interview in just a bit here. And these reports are specific for futures. But this tool is really, really cool. And I think you're going to enjoy this conversation because I've talked to thousands and thousands and thousands of traders over the course of my career. And it's hard to find any of them that are very aware of the probability statistics and data behind their trading. Most of us, let's be honest, are kind of just guessing. We trade from one strategy to another strategy. We let our emotions get involved. We're not using probabilities. We're not using data. We're not using statistics. So let's enter edgeful, a very approachable way in a simple format, as you'll see during this interview, where you can get access to what they call reports, which are going to give you real actionable data behind what's going on in the markets. And when they first contacted me, they actually didn't have futures data. And I said, probably not a fit if we don't at least have futures data. They added futures, they've added Forex. And while I'm a futures focused channel and most of the interview talks about some of the reports for the ES and for the futures markets, know that you can use this for stocks, for your options trading, for Forex. Really, really powerful stuff going on here. And if you check the description below, if you don't want to watch the whole thing, you're probably aware anytime I do one of these founders interviews, they're gracious enough to offer my audience an amazing, amazing deal. And you'll find that down below. It's basically 50% off for your first year. You can get this thing for about $197. I think $200 to use this tool for an entire year. It's a no-brainer. I've signed up. Hundreds of members of my community have already done this, and now I'm bringing it to YouTube. I think you're going to dig this interview. Enjoy. Thanks. All right, I'm joined today by the founders of edgeful. It's been a little while, as I mentioned in my intro, since I've done a founders interview. I'm excited to bring this back. We're going to talk about something a little different than all the prop and futures prop program interviews I did in the past. We're going to learn today about edgeful. We're joined by the founders here, so let's go ahead and get started. So before we dive into what edgeful is all about and all its offerings, could each one of you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll jump into the app.
Yep. So I can go. My name is Andre. I'm the CEO and co-founder of edgeful. My background is in finance and accounting. I was previously an analyst at a hedge fund in Boston called Weiss Asset Management. Then I was an analyst at Goldman Sachs for 2.5 years, and then I left to trade full time.
Great. All right. Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Okay, cool.
So I'm Sabine. I'm the CMO and co-founder. I have a background in marketing. I started off at a luxury candle company doing social media and paid ads, and then made my way to VP. At that point, decided I wanted to start my own company. So I had a luxury slipper line that I designed and manufactured and did all the social media for and the partnerships. But as that was scaling, I realized I didn't want to be in the physical goods space. And Andre just so happened to be building edgeful, which was a software. And based on my skills, he asked if I wanted to join the team. And here I am.
From slippers to software, huh? No trading background. How come I didn't get any slippers? Okay. We'll talk about that later. All right. Go ahead, Alec.
I'm Alec. So my investing kind of career started as a teenager, starting at, as many of you know, MarketWatch, kind of a paper trading account, grew to starting an investing club at my high school, teaching other people how to trade and manage my own portfolio. I ended up going to school for computer science and joined Amazon as an engineer, became a senior engineer there before leaving for a startup as director of engineering. And then last year, I was talking to Andre and Sabine, and I joined as CTO and co-founder as well. And I've been working on that ever since.
Great. All right, cool. Let's get into the meat of the discussion here. So, Andre, could you tell us a little bit about both the inspiration behind edgeful, but before you do that, just a real high level, like what is edgeful and what problem is it solving and how does it play in the technical analysis space?
Yeah, of course. So the edgeful gives you the probabilities of how certain things will play out in the markets. So the way that I'll go into the founding story as well. So when I first started trading, I came across the concept of this gap fill. And it's a very simple concept, very easy to see, very easy to measure. And when I was researching it more, I found that people were talking about it as if it fills 100% of the time, which obviously in trading, nothing happens 100% of the time. And given my analytical background, I went to go download a bunch of data, throw it into Excel. I'm extremely comfortable with Excel. And I could see, okay, the gaps up don't fill 100% of the time, gaps down don't fill 100% of the time, obviously. And after I got to see that information, I thought to myself, okay, cool, let me add some more information in there. Let me add some more reports. And I kept adding and adding more reports into this worksheet until it kind of became this like monster that I could no longer really manipulate. And I went online and I tried to find a tool that says, how often does this happen? Or how often does that happen? How often do gaps fill? Or how often are certain weekdays red or green? Or which days have the most volume? And there was nothing available. There was nothing public that showed that information, which was, in my opinion, honestly pretty shocking. But that was the inspiration of edgeful, and that's kind of what we do. It's exactly what we do. Is we show people the probabilities in a very simple and easy to understand manner, where regardless of your level of experience, you can open up edgeful, get a good understanding of what the probabilities are, and apply that to your trading directly.
Great. So would you describe, and maybe this is for Sabine since she's the one who has to market it, how would you describe where this fits within sort of tools and education? It's probabilities is what I'm all about. It's one of the reasons I think what you guys are doing is so cool. We need to teach people that that's all that trading really is just risk management and understanding probabilities. You can't predict the future. So where does this sort of sit within typical technical analysis? And other than providing something you needed, Andre, what problem is this solving for the trading marketplace?
Yeah, so something that I've noticed, especially like being in chat rooms, being on YouTube, being in Discords, like being in like learning about trading itself, I found that a lot of people trade based on emotion and not based on data because they actually are not familiar with data and like they don't know the language of data. By itself, it's very boring, it's very tedious, it's its own language. So people that get attracted to trading, they get attracted maybe for the wrong reasons, but there is a lot of opportunity in trading. But the very important piece is that you need to trade with the probabilities. As you mentioned, you're a probability guy. Like you need to trade on the side of the data. You need to trade with an edge. And what I've found is that a lot of people in the space trade with their emotions, and they trade from fear or greed or FOMO or whatever it is. And what we really want to do is make sure that we show people what the data is and allow them to put themselves in a position to take advantage of certain things that play out in a certain direction.
Gotcha. Anybody else for the kind of the problem that you're solving, or how you'd explain this in the elevator or pitch it to your grandma?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sabine.
No, go.
I was gonna say, I think the biggest thing, and Andre touched upon it about it a little bit, but I wanted to expand, is that it really is meant for kind of a whole range of skill levels.
Yeah.
But we think that in the space right now, a lot of these tools that are available are so highly priced. And so we come in at a very reasonable, $35 for our basic plan. We want to make it accessible. If you're someone who's just starting out trading, who's trying to learn, you might be scared to spend, $500 on a tool that you don't even know if it's going to be applicable to your trading. So we really want to be there for people who are first learning to trade, make it accessible. At the same time, we're seeing a lot of advanced traders still use our platform and find a lot of value out of it, because in the end, statistics are statistics, and they tell you how the trends are moving and how to take action on it. So that's really the focus, is allowing a whole range of traders. Especially we find that new traders are an underserved market and kind of in the space here.
And just one last thing to add to that, I think that our tool kind of helps people who might be afraid of data to get comfortable with it. For example, somebody like me who had who has no trading experience, I've started to learn how to understand like gap fills, average volume and range. Why is that important? And those types of things that without this, I wouldn't be able to figure out on my own. So really allowing people who are maybe intimidated by data to start getting comfortable with it and use it in their trading. Because
Great.
of how simple it is to read and like get value from.
Yeah, and we're going to jump into some examples in just a moment here. I think that'd probably be the best thing to do now is to jump into the app just for a little bit so we can get the audience familiar with what we're talking about here, and then we could then a lot of this will start to make sense, especially since we're doing this interview because you recently launched Futures, and this is the Futures Fanatic channel, and you mentioned gap fills a couple times. We don't really have gap fills as much in the futures market, so we'll talk about some of the reports that we've created specifically for members of my trading community, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But Andre, maybe if you can you give us, before we actually look at the app, can you just at a high level give us some examples of some of the actionable insights that you can provide, and then we can look at it visually?
Yeah, of course. So I can just verbalize them right now, and then I can go into more specifically like as we review them.
Yeah.
But so there's I'll just touch on one for now. So for example, I believe that because of the data that I've seen, that every weekday has its own personality. And you can see that through our volume and range by weekday report, which I'll show you in just a minute. But the bare bones of that report shows what days have opportunities and what days tend not to have opportunities. So what you'll see is that low volume days, everyone knows when volume is low, there's choppy price action and there's really not much there. Those are actually the days where a lot of traders blow up trying to force trades. So how do you identify those days before they're happening is very important. And then the days that have the larger opportunities, that have those home run trades that a lot of people miss out on, and they see on Twitter these people with like whatever, these massive gains, how do you identify those days before they happen is by understanding the personality of the instrument that you're trading. And what we'll cover in just a second here is that, for example, ES or MES, like the micro futures, whatever, there's a very clear distinction on when the opportunities are and when the opportunities are not there. So that's one thing that I think is very important for a trader, is to not only capitalize on the green day, on the big opportunities, but also to stay away from the bad trading days. So that's what I'll say.
All right. Yeah. So let's why don't we take a look and you can give some examples, examples there.
Sure. So just very, very quickly, very high level, I'll just run through kind of like how to navigate it in just a second. So we have stocks, we have Forex, we have futures. We're going to focus on futures up here for the sake of this interview. And up here, we have the entire steering wheel of the site. So this is how you navigate everything, is right here, this navigation bar. We have three types of reports. We have price action, volume, and indicators. Then within the price action report type at the moment. So when you click on here, these are all of our price action reports. Here we're looking at ES, and these are all the other futures contracts we have. Then we're looking at the New York session, and we have all the other sessions as well. And then we're looking at the trailing 1 year. So here, these are just shortcuts to trailing periods. Now we've selected the trailing 1 year. So just because I was just talking about it, I'll jump to the volume and range report. And again, this report measures the average volume and the average range by weekday. So the blue bars are the average volume, the white line is the average range. So you can clearly see an uptrend here in average volume and range, and Mondays actually clearly have the lowest volume and the lowest range of any weekday, which means choppier price action, not a lot of momentum, a lot of fake outs, and lowest range being the least amount of meat on the bone. Whereas later in the week, higher volume, higher range, which means a lot more continuation, a lot more momentum, a lot more range, which means a lot more meat on the bone. So focusing on trading these days and sitting on your hands these days is probably something that will help you avoid a lot of your losers and capitalize on a lot of better opportunities. Then the one thing I'll say in addition to that is Mondays are days where you bat for singles and you bat for doubles. You do not go for home runs because historically you're not going to get them. Later in the week are the days where you can go for those larger moves. You can use more size. You can set your profit targets a little further out. That is traditionally for ES going to happen later in the week. So very important to understand the difference between a Monday, which has roughly 25% less volume in range, than a Thursday or Friday.
Great. And you're looking at that on the New York session, right? Someone
Correct.
can select for the exact session. If you're in Asia or London, we
Correct.
know that for futures trading, 80, 90% of the opportunity is going to be during New York, but you can select the full entire 23-hour session. You can select any additional session. Because a question I get asked all the time is, I'm in Asia or I'm in Australia, that's part of in the Asian Pacific, or I'm in Europe or what have you. Should I be able to trade the S&P or the Dow Jones? Does it make sense for me? And the answer is generally not. You don't have much range, but anyway, you can select from a session time there. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'll just jump to a couple of these reports quickly. So this is one that we just added. This was actually by request, the previous day's range. So if anyone ever has any requests, we'll always have a button here that says new report ideas. You can just send in, if we don't have something, you can send something in and we'll build it out for you for free. This was a requested report. So what this measures is for every time the previous day's high is broken, how do we close on the day? So in the last year on ES, for every time we've broken the previous day's high, 74% of the time we've closed green on the day. So very bullish indication once we break that high. For every time we've broken the previous day's low, very similar story here, 76% of the time in the last year, we've closed red on the day. So the previous day's range, the previous day's high and low is very important key levels to look at, because after we do break them, there's a very strong correlation between a continuation or maintaining that area.
So hopefully everyone can just see the power in just that alone, which would be if we've broken the previous day's high and 75% of the time we close green on sessions like that, what would we do? What would be our action? Our action would be to be buying pullbacks within the trend with probability on our side, right? The deeper the pullback, the better.
Exactly.
It's a perfect example, and the opposite would be true on down days. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And then I'll show you one more very, very quick one. And this one is the market session correlation report, also within the price action report type. This one shows for every time that the London session is closed green, how is the New York session closed? What you can see is that 70% of the time when London closes green, New York also closes green. So in your pre-market plan, you're sitting and you're looking through, you're charting out your levels, you're just doing your traditional routine. Keep an eye on the London session and how it closed, because there is a very strong correlation between London and New York. So in the same case, London closing red, New York also 68% of the time will also close red. So just something to keep in mind. This is just a touch, like a very high level touch on what the types of reports that we have are, but we always like to show the probabilities, and we don't like to ever show buy or sell signals. This is all probabilities that you can apply to refine your edge as you trade.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, that's super helpful. Now, as I'm looking at this, I'm noticing very powerful, lots going on here, but it's a standalone kind of web application, which I imagine it always will be. Does this run in other platforms, or can I look at it in TradingView? How would that work?
So yeah, I can touch upon that as CTO. So right now it's standalone web application. So the first thing, long term, there's definitely is on the roadmap to integrate within other platforms, charting platforms, any kind of tool. I want to kind of open our API for consumption so that, other companies can pay for our data and consume our data and display it within their applications. The first thing we actually launched, as you can see here in the report details, is TradingView indicators for a select number of reports. So we have about 10 released right now, and we're releasing, 2 to 3 every week to kind of mimic what you see in edgeful. You can chart it on top of, as you're in TradingView as live trading. So, one example that I really like is the previous week's high and low. So we have that. We have gap fill reports and 10 more. I can't think of them all off the top of my head. So that's the first step we've taken to kind of exposing our data to other platforms that, someone may want a subscription to Edgeful, but they also want to be able to like only be on one page during their trading hours. And they may look at Edgeful to do research, pre-market, post-market, but they don't want to be switching between tabs. And so that's really long-term. Our goal is to build more and more of these integrations and kind of, building our APIs in a way that they can be consumed by other platforms if they're interested in partnering with us down the road.
Do you have a visual, Alec or Andre? Can you show that? I know you have TradingView up where you could show an example, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let me pull up I'll actually pull up this week's range indicator, and then I'll go drop down to the 30-minute here. So what this is the indicator. This is the previous week's range indicator, and the green line up here will show you the previous week's high, which was formed here. The red line will show you the previous week's low, and then this blue bar is what divides the previous week from the current week. So this is something you can see right live on your charts. And I mean, there's a corresponding report, obviously. So that would be this report here. And I'll just go to the standard one here. And then this report, I mean, not to go into another report here, but this shows how often have we touched the previous week's high and how often have we touched the previous week's low. And then that, in this case, we obviously touched the previous week's low.
And the plan is that the stats of the probabilities there will be visually plotted on TradingView as well, or is that the idea, or no?
So in the long term, yes, we're currently having it where we're just showing everything and
showing,
just showing the levels.
Correct. Yeah. So that's for right now, but eventually we're definitely going to have the actual data be presented.
So two other indicators that Andre could show. One that actually does plot the data is performance trends. So it shows like, when you're looking at the 15-minute bars, you can, without having to switch to the monthly bars, you can see the monthly performance or the weekly performance. So you can chart those to see the kind of the different performance. So that's an example of one that we're actually plotting the data.
Where you're plotting the values on TradingView. Okay.
Exactly. And then one that I really like, because I think it's interactive and live, is the opening range breakout. Because so our indicators aren't static, they're constant. So you can actually be live trading from the opening at 9:30. You can see how the orb is moving in that first half hour, and you can even adjust it. So all of our scripts are customizable with the inputs, so you can change what you consider the opening range breakout to be. And so. And that'll plot live as the day is going on. So I think that's another example of a great one that you can use to kind of inform your trading.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. So I think this leads into, Andre, you'd mentioned that there's that feedback or request a report. Can you walk us through the process of how you determined what to produce for the platform? Was that just based on your own needs initially, and how much of it is driven by user feedback since you've launched?
Yeah, of course. So initially, speaking of that Excel file that I was talking about earlier, initially it was based on what I had put into that Excel file and what I thought was relevant, which is great for me and great for people that also use the stuff that I use. But people use a lot of different things, and I know that there's a million ways to make money trading, and there's a million strategies that people have. So I would say about maybe at this point, probably 10% of the reports, or maybe 20% of the reports are the ones that I had built personally, but all the other ones that we have are by request. So obviously you can see this giant button up here. It's not so pretty, but it's very important to us that we have this here and that we take any requests for any type of report. So if it's something that we can build out, where if someone says, I want to look at if we've taken out last week's high, then what happens? Or they can, honestly, it's practically anything. But now at this point, a lot of the reports that we have are driven by user feedback and by what they find valuable. So at this point for me, I've put in all the reports that I find valuable for myself, but now we're focusing a lot more on making the tool a lot more diverse for a very wide variety of trading styles. So from scalping to day trading to swing trading, we want to make sure that we have something for everything. And that's why we're not very stubborn with what we include. And that's why we have the report requests, which are completely for free.
Right. But the idea is everything is essentially data driven, right? So you take you take all these various inputs, of which there's probably an unlimited amount, but I imagine many of them have to do with with the instrument, the product, the session time, maybe an indicator, and then you mix that all up and you get essentially a report that gives you actionable data, right?
Correct. Yeah. And just something that's very important for me to mention here is that nothing in here is opinion. We have no buy or sell signals. We don't have anything that's in here that is my opinion or anyone else's opinion. We want to make sure that this is purely fact, irrefutable information that traders can use. And now, obviously, when you see something like this, like the let me just show you, in this case, like the previous day's range, which I just covered, 74% of the days that we break previous day's high, we close green. That's great for us. That's honestly like a great selling point for us. But there are other things that are more 50-50, like green and red days. Like this is kind of like, other than Monday, these days are pretty flat. And that's not very, it's not a sales point for us. It's not very, it's not like that doesn't help us. But the important piece is that this is the facts. And that's what is very important, that like everything is just a matter of what the data is.
Yeah, and not every report needs to produce an actionable insight. In fact, that's what trading, it's all about, filtering through the noise to try to arrive at some signal, right? That's what we ultimately want to do.
And to kind of bounce off that, that's an example of, like, you know, every report we have doesn't have to be a 90% edge, right? You know, the whole point of our reports is, some of them is to even show you that, okay, this you may have thought is an edge. You may think that Mondays, you know, are 80% green days or red days, but actually it's not true. So you shouldn't be trading on that signal. And some of the reports you don't know until you know, right? You don't know until we build it and you see it, that, you know, this actually, the strategy I was doing has been kind of working, but there's risk that it's kind of, I've been gambling and getting on the lucky side. So I think that's really important. And we're looking for more and more reports. You know, we have earnings reports. So how does, you know, are there different reports, FOMC, that I can find, you know, the 80% edge where I'm trading? And so we're building more and more of those, and finding kind of, you know, more announcement days and different things like that could lead to those larger edges where you actually can have constantly make winning trades on that data.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, would you say that you could build entire strategies from what you uncover in edgeful, or is it meant to more complement and enhance existing strategies? To what Sabine was mentioning, if someone doesn't have a lot of experience at all, how do they come into this and find value? So I guess that's like a two-part question, which is, if I'm a little bit more advanced and I know what I'm looking for, could I actually create strategies entirely based on this data? Or would you say that more advanced people are going to use it to complement and enhance? And on the flip side, if someone's coming in without a lot of ideas to begin with, how do they get the most out of the tool?
Yeah. So there are some reports in here that are purely strategy based, like the orb report, for example. A lot of people love the opening range breakout, and this is a strategy by itself. We show you, in this case, I'll just quickly cover it, how often price breaks out to the upside, to the downside, and then we also show the performance after price has broken either one. So a place in terms of where to set your profit targets, what direction is going to break, and like pretty much as a whole, we cover the orb by itself. But then on the flip side, the volume and range by weekday is not a very actionable report. It's more contextual. So for a beginner trying to pick the reports that might have a little more direction or more strategy oriented, like the gap fill report, for example, very simple strategy, targeting yesterday's close, etc. That's something that a beginner can use, or someone that doesn't really know where to start, is selecting the more strategy oriented reports, whereas an expert can apply the strategy oriented reports to their current trading, as well as adding more of the contextual reports like the volume and range to their current strategy.
Gotcha. That's really helpful. So this is the Futures Fanatic channel, and I've been working with you to produce some reports that are pretty specific to some of the stuff that we do in our trading community, which I'm going to be excited to share on this channel in the future. But so with your recent addition of reports for futures trading, can you point out some of the differences maybe that you've seen? I know that I don't think any of you were futures traders, right? You're looking at this more from an equity perspective. But yeah, when we talk about data, we got a lot more data when it comes to futures than equities for the most part, because equities are just the New York session for the most part. So What type of insights or anything do you think was going to be specific to futures traders?
Yeah. So in this case, what I'll say is one thing that's very important, and you had mentioned this in the beginning, is that here we're looking at the New York session. So when you're looking at the New York session, you're only looking at the data within these blue boxes, and these blue boxes just cover the New York session.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, and then when you switch to the London session, for example, which I'll just quickly switch over to the London session here. Now you're looking at the information for these green boxes now, which is shifted over slightly to the London range. One thing that I've noticed in the future space is that people really like to look at from one session to the next, which obviously does not apply in equities. So I am an options trader from my background, I don't use the futures section, I use the stock section. But one thing that I've noticed is people are very, very intrigued about the market session correlations. So in this case, I just had reviewed this, but this shows from the correlation from London to New York, and then this one shows the Tokyo to London. So something that's very different from futures, and something that in terms of what I think can benefit futures traders, is to pay attention to the sessions that equities don't have. That's the one thing that I would say is to focus on the correlation between the sessions, and that can give you insight to trade that main New York session.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we do again in our community is we determine how we're going to approach the New York session, which is the open of the New York session, based on the amount of range and what's happened in these overnight sessions, which would be the combination of Asia and the London session. So again, we have a big advantage, I think, in terms of being futures traders, because we have that much more data to work with. And it can really give us insights into what the session is going to look like.
Yeah.
And in fact, the futures do drive the opening of the equities. That's how it works, right? The futures are going to wag the dog, if you will, of the equity markets, and those are the adjustments that you see when the markets open.
Yeah.
Can you share like any success stories that you guys have had from traders? Or when did it launch, and how long has it been out there in the wild, and what kind of feedback have you gotten so far?
Yeah, so we actually launched in January, and the feedback has been incredible. And it's something that we're very humbled by. We're very happy about. The interactions on social media, the testimonials that we have are great. Once people start to understand how to use this and apply it, they start to make a lot of money, and they're now like huge fans of ours. I get on calls with them. They're very happy with us, and they love the tool. You'll find that a lot of our retweets and people that repost us are our users, which is great and very heartwarming for us. Obviously, there's two people that I'll mention the most. I don't want to say their names, but one guy was using our earnings performance report he's more of a beginner trader, and was using our earnings performance report to pretty much like get some indication on how to trade earnings around, I think it was Palantir actually, but he had 10x one position, which was crazy. But 10x one position like really helped him out in terms of like his trading portfolio, obviously, like his motivation as a trader. And then the other guy, actually, he's an options trader, and he trades SPX 0DT options, and he uses I'll actually just pull this up here quickly. He uses our ATR report. He uses it primarily on SPY because we don't have indices at the moment, but he buys straddles on SPX. So not to get into the details of how options work, because this is a futures channel, obviously, but this guy has a larger account. Obviously, he has a larger account. I'll preface by saying that, but he started to make between $25,000 and $40,000 a week by buying straddles on SPX 0DTE because of the expected range that he gets from ATR. And we introduced him to ATR, which was crazy. So those are two of the more successful stories that we have, and we have a bunch more, but those are the two standout ones.
Yeah, that's great. And then so you're all on social media. By the way, we'll put links, of course, to to how to get involved and all that stuff. I mean, speaking of, maybe one of you can speak to the sort of subscription and pricing model, or how people get involved in this, and what are the various levels?
Yep. So what do you guys want to touch on the socials?
I mean, we can.
Yeah.
So we have Twitter. We're at Twitter, Get Edgeful, Reddit, Instagram, Get Edgeful, YouTube,
Yep.
Edgeful. We have a lot of resources on our platform. So we actually post a lot of the reports on our socials. So we're kind of giving out that free content to everyone, which has kind of also helped me learn how to use this data. As someone who has no experience trading, I've had to learn how to get insights from the report so that I can make posts about them. So just to let everyone know how easy it is to actually start picking this up. But yeah, so we do offer a lot of free insights on our socials, and we'll link them below, but that's mostly what we use them for.
Okay.
It's kind of like a free membership online.
Yeah, and pricing wise, I'll give the pricing that is now, but I'll talk about, we can talk about like what's coming soon. So right now we're $35 a month, which I think is like a very affordable entry point. We offer a discounted plan if you sign up for annual plan at $324. That's the only plan. Those are the only plans we currently have, but we're planning to introduce new plans, several higher tiers, based on the new features that we're rolling out. So anyone who signs up now before we introduce new plans will be grandfathered to the highest tier. So sign up while you can to get, the best prices. But if you want me to go right into a bit like kind of what we're planning to introduce and talk about kind of the roadmap, happy to dive into that as well.
Yeah, and before we do that, I'll just point out that what we'll do as part of this this video and launch is come up with some sort of pretty compelling thing that'll be in the description below for how you can get involved, and just check that description below for the latest and greatest of what the Futures Fanatic channel is going to bring to you in terms of compelling reasons to try out Edgeful. So yeah, Alec, what are some of the future developments or features that that you guys have on the roadmap?
Yeah, so we have extensive roadmap planned over the kind of next 12 to 18 months. There's a lot of things we want to bring to market. Some of it, we're going to keep close to our vests and let people know as it's coming out. But I'll touch upon like 4 or 5 things that I'm really excited to build and roll out. So the first is kind of personalization. So we have a dashboard that shows kind of our 4 most used reports. And what I want to build is allowing more personalization to the platform. So right now, it's static, it's built as it is. But I want people, you may want to look at all the data at one time, like all 4 of these reports. So we're going to introduce a feature very soon that allows you to customize this dashboard and include whichever reports you want. So that if, let's say, the morning before the session's open, you can check this dashboard in one place and not have to click between several reports. And one thing on top of that would be allow you to like favorite reports so that within the dropdown, you can access the ones that you're going to much quicker. Next, obviously, is a lot more TradingView indicators. We have a lot in kind of the backlog. We have requests that aren't necessarily reports now, but we're going to build out as well. As we want to increase this report library to over 100 reports. So that's the goal in the next few months. And by the end of the year is to have like over 100, 150 reports. The one I'm actually most excited about, because I've heard kind of a lot of rumbling about it, is custom session selectors. So I know that there's the standard session selectors, which is, New York, Asia, and London. But talking to customers, we've been hearing about, I want to, check this more specific session, or, I trade 1 hour before New York as well as the New York session. Can I see the data during that time? So that's one thing for our higher tiers. Once we build it out, will be available for our higher tier plans, is being able to pick any start and end time for your sessions. Furthermore, I know, Rod, this one you had asked us to talk to us about as well, is being able to pick any values for ATR. So right now our ATR is based on 14-day ATR. We're going to allow you to pick, whether you trade based on 5-day ATR, 7-day ATR, 10-day. We're going to allow you to kind of customize your experience. Simple moving average as well. We have a couple SMA and RSI reports. What's the range you want for those? So you'll be allowed to, change those. And lastly, one that I'm really excited about, it's a little, maybe 2 months out, 3 months out rather than right away, is being able to combine stats. So, for example, being able to combine gap fill and ATR stats within a report. So really long-term, the vision of this is to build it as, there's these set reports that you can review and learn from and build it. But we want to be a platform where you can come in and really almost play with the data yourself, building reports yourself even, and having a completely custom data analysis platform for, whether you're trading futures or Forex or stock. And, as we add other things like crypto or indexes as well. So that's, really the long-term goal for edgeful.
That's great. Do you speak at the time we're recording this? It's going to be big tech earnings. So we have, even though this is Futures Fanatic channel, we do talk about stocks. So we have Tesla and Meta and Google, a number of reports this week. Do you have access to real-time options data, so I could have a report at some point in the future that would tell me how often Meta trades above or below the expected range? The expected move, which would be the combination of the puts and the at the money puts and calls.
Yeah. So we don't have any options specific data in here at the moment. We're going to add it. The important thing for us, it's like it's like what we hold to the highest standard is the simplicity. So we need to figure out a way to design the options data and all the Greeks and the gamma and the delta and the theta, et cetera, in a way that people can easily understand. And so that's right now something that's probably maybe a month or two or maybe 3 months out as we kind of flesh out the design and the layout of what that'll look like.
Yeah, that would be great because I'll be watching Bloomberg or CNBC and they'll throw up a stat that says just like that, the expected move in Facebook is whatever, 3% up or down, which is 60% lower than it has been over the last 3 quarters. And I always wonder, where did they get that? That's really cool. That should be available to the public, right? That we know that. And that doesn't involve any Greeks, right? It simply just involves what's the expected move. So obviously the sky's the limit with the kind of stuff that you'll be able to do here. So that's great. Well, this has been great. I think that, we've just really scratched the surface here. So, of course, like I said, check the description below for a lot more information about not only the launch special that we'll be doing here, but how you can get involved in working with edgeful. I'll probably also add some ideas to this interview, some things that we're doing within our own community specific to futures that give you some ideas. Before I guess we can just end with this, like any sort of parting thoughts or suggestions that you have just based on what traders should do to eliminate the FOMO and the fear and begin to find ways to use data in a more approachable way.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I would say is trading based on your emotions is never going to work in the long term. It might work once, twice, 3 times, but over the long term, if you're serious about being in this business, you cannot trade on your emotions. You have to trade with the data. And something else that I've been kind of like preaching recently is sticking to the highest probability setups. Don't try to force a trade just because you can't sit on your hands. The data is right there. You have it at your fingertips. Just take advantage of it in a way that will benefit you, and don't, because you just can't sit on your hands, try to take advantage of everything. Less is more in this business, and we're showing you like all of the things that you need to become successful. So, I mean, I would say that less is more. Less is more with that in terms of focusing on highest probability setups, and managing your emotions obviously is a separate thing, but that's what I would say personally.
How about you, Alec?
For me, it's not directly related, but I always like to point out something that I've learned, kind of drilled into my head since I was a teenager trading, is the magic of compounding interest. I think a lot of people hear that term, but no one actually ever sits and kind of calculates the power of it. So, to like kind of newer traders who get discouraged, you need to stick to it. It really is about, even if you're swing trader or day trading, it's about staying in the game long enough to catch those wins. So, set your stop losses well, but really it's go read about the magic of compounding interest is the only thing I will say. It's amazing. And until you sit down and, do the thing where if you double a penny starting on the bottom left of the chessboard, double a penny and see what it gets you at the end of the chessboard. And I think that's kind of a trading philosophy I've always had, is even when you're trading when your trading style may be short term, think long term. Stay in the game long enough so that you can get those big wins, because most people quit too early. So I think that's like my biggest message. And same with edgeful. If you're not understanding it right away, call us. We're always available for demos, and stick long enough and really try to learn how to use that data, because it will pay off dividends. We have so many customers that are proof of that. And so those are kind of my two things that, always be thinking long term, even when your actions are short term.
Yeah.
I
Great.
guess I
Sabine?
can just add one thing to that.
Yeah.
I think it could be very intimidating if you're not an analyst, if you don't know how to use Excel, to even think about looking at data like this. But if you're just willing to like put your emotions aside for a second and just open the app for a week, it's free, and every day look at something different and try and understand, like, okay, this is not as, like, I can get something from this, and just take away one piece of information, and then at the end of the week put it all together and try and build something that gives you that can help you get, I don't know, just some sort of direction on how to build a strategy. Like, just
Yeah, I like that. I
don't
mean,
be intimidated by the data just because you're not familiar with it. Like, just based on what I've been doing for our socials, I've had to write all of the copy for our Reddit posts and our Twitter posts. And with that, I'm kind of learning how to read this. So it might take you a while, but like, just keep working at it and eventually you do get it.
yeah, you can see right there on the screen. I mean, there's training and education right in there, regardless of whether you're even familiar with what a gap fill is. And there's some visual looks at what those candlestick patterns look like. But I've used the app quite extensively. Well, not quite extensively. I've begun to use it more. And what I like about it is, well, it fits in very, very well with everything that we do with Futures Fanatic and TDG, the Traders Dev Group, which you can find out more about in the description below. Is that I'm not looking at a chart, right? Finally, I mean, we talked about this will be integrated into charting platforms so that people can have this sort of side by side, but also have the ability to just stay in one environment if they'd like to pull back some of the data. But we're not looking at candlesticks here or at charts or things like that. We're looking at data and probabilities and reports, which I think should actually be more approachable even for newbies than trying to, look at a chart, let alone even figure out how to get futures data into your charting platform. I mean, it's all right here, right? You just, as long as you know the symbol, you're ready to go, and you can start looking at some reports. By the way, before we end, if you could just go to futures real quick, Andre, and show that it has all the symbols to select from. It's got energies and metals and stock indices and treasuries. So just a little bit of mixture of just about everything in there. And I'm sure if people want to add soybeans or other metals and things, you can do that in the future, I guess. So
yeah, definitely, we're always open. Over the past 2 months, we've added a lot of tickers from customer requests. One we may have overlooked, or even here that I see is, and MCL, PL, CL. We only added the past 3 weeks, because originally we had done more kind of the equity matching futures, but now we've introduced a lot of these out of customer requests, because they're like, I only trade this symbol, can you add it? And we usually add it within a couple hours when the request comes in. So, we work fast, and we get you what you need as soon as you need it.
Yeah. And depending on what you trade, I'm sure there's plenty of stock and options traders that are watching this that can think of all types of reports that they want to pull back for some equities. But for you futures folks, I'm sure the gears are spinning for you as well, meaning that if you're a grains trader, of course the crop report is really important. If you're an energy trader, of course the EIA report is very important. And as edgefill grows, we can probably create reports eventually that will look at all those various things and how things react. I mean, you have an FOMC report in here right now, right? But overlaying particular economic events with instruments is going to be a huge part of what edgefill will be able to do. As an example, right now, CPI I traded for 20 years where I couldn't even tell you when the CPI report came out because no one cared because interest rates were so low for so long. Now it's a massive event, right? Every time there's a CPI or PCE, which there is this Friday, we're like, wow, we got to really watch the entire market. We have to watch the market right now when FOMC folks chatter about anything. So that's what edgeful is going to be all about, combining those types of events with instruments with a little bit of understanding of what you're looking for, and it'll spit out some really insightful stuff.
And just to kind of, you mentioned get those gears turning. If Andre, if you want to show the earnings report, so we're actually going to release in the next week or so more reports around earnings, for not around earnings, but the same style that Andre has here for FOMC and CPI. So you can see the data of the past 3 years, what happens before, after, and different time periods. So what's the 3-day trailing pre-FOMC performance? What's the day of the FOMC performance? What's 3 days after? And you can pick different period lengths. So I just wanted to call out this report because I think, as you said, if people want to know crude reports, if we get some interest in that, we can add a report just like this that shows the pre and post and the day of that report. And so we're planning to release one for FOMC that looks just like this, as well as CPI.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think everyone's going to really get a lot out of taking a look at this tool. There are certainly things like this, but nothing that I've seen this approachable, this comprehensive. And now that we have futures as well, so equities, forex, and futures. Remember, friends don't let friends trade forex. But we're all set, and we're excited about the future for what you guys got going on here. This is great. Let's end it there, and I want to thank everybody for your time. Thanks again for everyone watching to the end. Might put a little special note here at the end of this interview if you made it this far, and we'll probably do an update at some point in the future once we get a lot more people using edgeful. All right, that'll be it for today. Thanks.